Segunda Beach dreams of becoming a thriving tourist destination, but the harsh reality is that the community can barely afford to keep its own lights on. Plagued by constant brownouts, they've been forced to import expensive power from San Martin Obispo, straining the city's budget and undermining critical services like healthcare. Just when it seems like there's no way out, local leaders began receiving applications for oil exploration near the county's edge. And behind these applications, Russ Becker, the infamous industry magnate from Verde Beach and the CEO of Drake Oil. A few months later, the news breaks. Drake Oil has discovered what could be the largest untapped oil field in the state. Now, while oil fields and tourism don't usually mix, the revenue they generate certainly does. The oil fields will inject significant tax revenue into the city's coffers, dramatically improving the region's budgetary outlook. Further, Drake Oil is pledged to build a new gas power plant near the site, providing Segunda Beach with affordable energy. On top of that, they promised a one-time donation for a new medical clinic, recognizing the need for better healthcare near their operations. Despite a heated debate, officials couldn't resist the promise of economic relief, and the wells were overwhelmingly approved. So in this video, we'll develop the Drake Oil extraction fields, build the new gas power plant to fuel the region, and expand Segunda Beach to ensure that it has enough citizens to support this new industry, including constructing the much-needed Drake Medical Clinic. But even with all of our careful planning, a few curveballs are going to be thrown our way that might sink the city. We'll have to see if we can survive them or not.
Nice.
And if you're excited to start brewing some Texas tea, hit the like button. And if you think that the county should have held out for a more sustainable form of energy, hit the like button for that too, and let me know how you feel down in the comments below. Or leave an emoji representing your favorite source of energy for the sake of engagement. And without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, and welcome back to Segunda Beach. So in this video, we are going to be developing oil fields, and we're going to be doing this far away from Segunda Beach. We're going to go down the highway straight towards the edge of the map where we have a significant oil deposit. So just a little bit of planning. What I'm thinking is that we will have our oil fields right here, and then we'll have our power plant likely back here on the other side of this lake. I also want to try to use the topography to adjust the way that these oil fields will look. And I've decided to do this based on a little bit of research that I've done about oil fields before recording the episode. So I decided to hop on over to conservation.california.gov and take a look at their oil well finder. And this actually shows you where every single oil well that's ever been tapped in the state of California is located. So this is actually Morro Bay, and you can see that there are oil fields in close proximity. So I decided to take a look near this timber area. And what you can see is that there are a number of oil fields that I don't think you would know are oil fields just by looking at a map. But when you zoom in, what you can tell is that these are indeed active oil fields. And I think we can learn a couple of things from these fields just by looking at them. First of all, there are roads going through all of these. So as we place our industry, we're likely going to want to make our own roads to the extractors and storage areas. Second, if we take a look at the terrain, we can see that it's relatively flat all the way around these. And then finally, I just wanted to see, if you're on the road, what these areas look like so we can get a feel for that. And what you could tell is you can see them slightly, but they have been obstructed by landscaping. And I think it's natural landscaping, nothing planned, as well as berming and things of that nature. These are all considerations that we'll have to take as we are building this site. With that in mind, I'm just going to build a road into the site. And I'm going to start out with a highway. This highway is going to go right back to where our power facility will eventually be located. And now I know that the fields are going to be right here, so I'm going to meander around this lake and then back along the side of this one. And I think that we should probably do a bit of grading to make this happen. And that'll be good enough for now. So now I'm going to take the alleyways and use those as our local roads back here. And now I'm going to use some of the gravel roads as the local roads into our oil fields. Now, before we place our first field, I want to take a look at how much oil we are currently consuming, just to get a baseline for where we're at. You can see that we are currently consuming 0.1 tons per month, so we're going to need to keep an eye on that. I have a feeling we're going to produce a ton more by the end of this episode. The other thing I want to take a look at is our taxation and our loans. So I think that we need to go back to the drawing board and kind of reset our demand, and I want to set everything back to 10%. This should help us maximize our revenue, and when we have a bunch of revenue coming in, we can start to really address the specific types of industry that we are attracting to our city. But right now is not that time. Now, the big place where this is going to help us is our hotel. We've now taken the taxes for the hotel from 6% to 10%, which is why our tax revenue hasn't changed dramatically. Now, we also took out loans in the last video, and I'm going to be taking out more. But before we do that, I'm going to pay this off so we can maximize the amount that we are generating right now while we are building the oil fields. Our first oil field will go right here. We need to bring power over to this site, and I don't have the funding to build the power plant yet. But what I can do is connect up this local power line. And there should be water right underneath the highway, which might not be where it belongs, but it's where we have it. I wish that we had a continuous contour option. I feel like it should just be a button right here. But until we get that button, the way that we can resolve this is to use our paths to draw our own lines. I will delete this eventually, but this is where I don't want to encroach. So now, as I draw out our industry area, I should be able to easily follow this. I'll just turn off all my snapping here and go right along. So I think that we'll probably be able to fit 2 or 3 more of these oil areas in. I'm going to place one more at the end of this road. And then for our final field, we'll give it its own road. And there we go. We have our 3 oil fields in place. And it looks like we are producing a ton of oil right now. 8.5 tons of oil per month. Most of that is a surplus, so this should do a lot for the region. Now, an interesting thing is that just like our farming, we're able to draw surfaces right over the top of this industry. So I want to come back and do that after we have more of these wells fill in, because it is difficult to delete the surfaces once wells spawn on top of them. But to get more wells to spawn in, we're going to have to level up these industries, and for that, we're going to need more employees and some transportation to get out here. So I think we're going to turn our attention to that now. We'll have to grow the city a bit and then reconfigure our bus routes so that they are able to stop out here by this oil industry. And I'm thinking that we are going to continue heading down towards the beach right here. The main reason for that is we've got this big hill right here, which would be a pretty significant barrier to development. Building on this hillside would be much more expensive than building on this flat coast. That said, to be able to expand outward, we're going to need to buy some tiles. So I'm going to buy at least this one for now, but I'd love to buy this one as well eventually. Let's see how much that would cost. We need another $50,000, $60,000 before we can do that. So we'll get this one for now, and this will give us the opportunity to start expanding along the coast right here. But we've got to do a bit of grading. I kind of just threw some roads on down here, and what I think I'm going to do instead of what we've done is kind of follow the contour lines a bit. So we'll back out Coleridge Street. Now we at least have some nice stubs for these roads. Now I think that we're going to change the way that our grid is oriented, and I kind of want this new grid to be based upon the shoreline here. So even though we've got this weird area right here that we can't build in just yet, I am going to build one major collector going down here. This is our arterial highway. I'll build a collector going down here, which will link up all the neighborhoods in this area to the rest of Segunda Beach. And then I want to make sure that we're preserving enough space to expand the highway in the future. That is something that I would expect the state DOT to handle or require, that we have some sort of space reserved for future highway expansion. So I'm going to run along this with a 2-lane road with our diagonal parking. And the reason for that is I just want to make sure that we have capacity here in the future. And I'm also going to do a lot of grading. This is a major road. We should make sure that it's relatively flat. I'm also going to make sure that it's above sea level. That white line is sea level. I don't know why we are not seeing flooding up to that line, but we'll make sure that we are planning for the future. Now, interestingly, there's another tile that we need to purchase, and this one's actually pretty important. It is the rock. So I am going to attempt to purchase this, and if we don't have enough money, I'm going to take out a loan for it, which I really didn't want to do. Oh, we're just a little bit short. So we'll just take out a small loan, and we'll pay that back as soon as we can. Now this is unfortunate. I was really thinking that I would be able to take all the parking off this road on the bridge, but I can't. So instead of doing that, I'm likely going to need to neck the bridge down, which looks a little bit silly, but it's what we have to do. Now, we're not going to be building this entire area out, but I did want to have a little bit of planning going into this so that we don't inadvertently make it impossible to cross this river right here. And I think that's really important. Cities do have long-range plans. They generally have a 20-year horizon, and they will plan out where major arterials and collectors are going to be to ensure that you don't inadvertently block it with development, because oftentimes developers are the ones developing all the local roads in their neighborhoods. So I'm going to basically focus on this area today. And we're gonna have a mixture of low density development, commercial, probably along the waterfront right here, and then some high density on the other side, or higher density, probably medium density. Nothing's truly high density in this city at this point in time. Now, to preserve the right-of-way along the highway, I am going to use the parallel road trick. So for this, I'm going to go into parallel mode, get the offset that I want, which I want to preserve at least 6 units. And I'm just going to go along this road using the continuous tool. And if I'm going from the correct direction, I should be able to perfectly parallel this. And as long as the road that I'm paralleling doesn't turn light blue like that, I can just continue along here. And there we go. That should be good enough. And that should give us enough room to expand the highway in the future. Now, it's going to be a fairly simple layout through here. I don't want to do anything overtly suburban just yet because I want this to become an integral part of the historic city. So the name of the game right here is going to be to create a very highly replicable roadway grid through here. That would enable quick expansion. Okay, and I've come up with a little bit of a layout for this area, and for the most part, it has a pretty strong grid, but I decided to do a couple of eyebrows on the ends right here to create some more developable space and to try to make it a little bit more interesting. And I think that this is pretty rational. The way that I came up with this was just respecting the topography and trying to respect the spacing that we would need for the bridges, for instance. You wouldn't want this road to tee right into the bridge right here because as you're coming down from the bridge, you would have someone turning into you potentially. Now, this road right here is probably one that for now I'm going to sever, but I wanted this to line up nicely with this industrial road so that in the future, if the highway is elevated, we could just make that connection right across there. The other thing that I've done is I added this couplet right here, which I will probably take and actually make one ways. The reason that this is here is simply that our grids didn't line up, and I thought it was an opportunity for a bit of green space. So we'll likely have some green space, some pedestrian facilities, and some lovely palm trees going up and down there. Now, let's plan the rest of this area out because I don't want to just start zoning things in randomly. So first things first, let's take a look at our park coverage. And I believe that every kid deserves access to a small playground. So I'm going to add at least, I'm going to add at least one of these through here. And that interestingly provides enough access for this entire area, but I don't feel like this is enough. I was going to just kind of create my own park here, but I forgot that we now have these pocket parks. And I think we have an opportunity to maybe string a couple of these together to create our own custom park. Why don't we try something like that? The only unfortunate thing is that the surfaces don't make all that much sense. I'm going to plop a couple of these, which is kind of a perilous situation considering our budgetary situation right now, but I'm going to try, and it looks like I have two that are the same. And of course, as I move it, it changes the surface, which kills me. So we might just kind of, instead of stringing these together, use this one. That got us a little bit of money back, but boy, oh boy, did we waste a lot. This is a tough financial situation. I think our best course of action is likely not to raise taxes, but it's what we're going to do anyway for the time being. We need to have some revenue coming in until we zone these things in, and I don't want to zone things in again until we have things like, at least at a bare minimum, parks in place. And my goodness, I know that City Skylines 2 does not have boss battles, but if it did, it would be the surface tool. This thing is both my favorite invention included as part of City Skylines 2, and my ultimate nemesis. I constantly have issues with it, and I continue to use it because I love the results. And I know that surfaces themselves are polarizing, but my goodness, I love them. So with all of that damage done, creating this park, spending all of our money, I feel like even though I want to add more parks, the city doesn't have the money to do so. So I'm going to add some more density along this road. And I want to basically kind of continue the pattern that we've had over here, but for one minor change. I'm going to try using some of our Japanese medium density housing along here because I think that it will fit this area pretty nicely. So with this, I want to leave some gaps, making sure that we are trying to give a little bit of separation in between these buildings. I know that in Japan, they wouldn't necessarily have that separation, but this is still a small town. And bluntly, this is a lot of density for a community of this size. So now that we have that extra parking right there, I'm going to convert these roads to have wide sidewalks because I don't care about the street parking. What I really care about is that we preserve the capacity for the future, the right of way. So now this is wide enough that we could add 2 more lanes onto Sunset Street in the future if we want to. So with that in mind, I actually want to take Cedar Street and do the exact same thing. There's no reason to have 4 lanes on this road. And if we don't need it, we shouldn't build that capacity. We have a little bit of money right now. I'm going to try to zone in the rest of this area to try to make more money. What I'm going to do is have a little bit of commercial, likely near Cedar Street. We've got some elevation to deal with, but we'll figure that out. We'll have mostly single family residential back here with a little bit of neighborhood commercial mixed in. I want to pay close attention to Garland Street right here and Wood Street to make sure that we're not zoning anything along there, because if we do that, it will be torn down when the freeway is inevitably expanded. And then the other thing I want to do is going to be the thing that is a little bit perilous, and that is going to be, we are going to build some mixed use along Sunset Street in the water, but I want this to face the water. And for that, I'm going to need to build a quay wall. We're going to see how that turns out. We're going to need to experiment a little bit with that, but that'll be the last thing that we do. So let's see if we have enough money for 1 dog park. We indeed do. I'm going to place that right in the center of the neighborhood. So we'll place this near the highway. It's allowed use. And then I'm going to load up this entire big town, which is good. We get some more money. Thank goodness. We can pay back some of those loans. We also get some development points and some expansion permits, and we get high density housing for the first time, which is excellent to see. Not that we're going to add it right away. I think it's kind of inappropriate. The only high density housing I would consider would be the UK high density housing because it's not all that tall. This also means that we get some new signature buildings, including the UK city apartments, which actually would probably be a nice asset to have along the water, but maybe not in this area. Now I'm gonna zone in most of this area, and I want to block zoning along the roads right here. And now that I look at this, I realize that I've made a tragic mistake. So I added this eyebrow right here, but it's actually within the DOT's right-of-way. So I need to reconfigure Garland Street just a bit because I really want to have this eyebrow. I think it's kind of a unique feature. So I'm going to back this out just a little bit. And there we go. That was a fairly simple fix, actually, so not that big of a deal. You know, I kind of wish that we had a larger eyebrow so we could fit 1 more house here. That's why you have these eyebrows. So I'm going to unlock them within the development tree. And this will give us access to our larger roundabouts, which give us the homes right on the edge, which is what I was looking for. Now we've got the residential zoned in. I added just a couple of mixed use buildings and some commercial, the Japanese commercial. Not 100% sure how I feel about these, but I'm going to reserve judgment until these level up a little bit. So we'll leave it for now. And then right here, just a little bit of commercial and office. Okay, and I've found a way to make this somewhat developable. The grid is pretty broken around here because of the curve in the road, so I ended up adding a couple of parking lots that aren't my favorite, but they help this area at least feel a bit more complete. Now, I did have to stagger these and leave some separation because of the grade, but if you're building on a grade, it's totally possible to do it. You just have to be willing to leave that bit of separation. We'll load that up with trees, which will make it look a little bit better a little bit down the line. So now the big project I want to take on over here is going to be along Sunset Street, where I want to have a quay wall with some buildings facing the water. Look at the view that you get right here. You get a view of the rock, you get a view of where someday we'll have boats coming in constantly, and it would be the perfect place to really sit and enjoy the sunset or just to watch the ships pass by. So I think that we want to do something a little bit special right here, and I'm a little bit nervous to try this, but what we're going to do is attempt to have some of our new urban promenades buildings right along here, so mixed use right along the coast facing the water. So I'm going to create a flat pad all the way along here. I'm going to create an area specifically for creating a quay wall. So this is slightly lower than ground level. And I'm going to figure out exactly how many units back this is going to be because we want to keep this perfectly square. This is the part that I'm nervous about. We could break the zoning a ton. Ideally, this is 6 or 8 units deep. So this is 6. I can go 2 more beyond that. And now I'm in the water. So that is the thing that I'm worried about. So I'm going to try to just take this up a little bit. And it's completely an elevated segment. So that's going to be a problem for us. So rather than doing that, I'll take this out to 6 to begin, and then I'm going to be methodical with the rest of it.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Woo! Thing sucks.
And my goodness, vanilla quay walls are pain. But we've worked our way through it, and we have what is going to be a really important community amenity. So it's a little bit lumpy, it's a little bit bumpy, it's a little bit ugly, but you know what? We're not going to let perfect be the enemy of good in this particular instance, and we're just going to deal with it. To square things up, we absolutely must add some sort of an alleyway through here. So what I'll do is first block everything along Sunset. That squares everything up along our quay wall. And then I'm going to run a one-way alley through the back end using our grid tool. We could use this for some sort of community amenity. Maybe we put some more of our pocket parks in there. But the main thing is that now this is perfectly rectangular. So I'm just going to load this up with the urban promenades buildings. And in the middle over here, I can't. Because you can see it's actually getting one gigantic zone here. So I've got to do it in halves. So I'll do half right there and then half right here. And then I'll leave a spot for a parking ramp. I wonder how much these are. The multi-level parking ramp is way too big, but I could probably throw in one of these small parking ramps. So it's so silly to have this right on the water like this, but we don't really have any parking. So I think it's the best that I can do. And then the zoning is breaking up right here. So rather than attempting to resolve it, I'm going to throw a street right there and we'll have another park or something like that. And you know, it looks unbelievably silly to have this parking right here. I don't know. Yeah, this is underground. So in an area, oh no, it's not underground. It's not underground. So it's not completely unreasonable, but I just feel like we could do better. So I might move this a block back and then have a little bit more development along here. Maybe we'll even add a little bit of surface parking. That's not totally unheard of to have surface parking. Now I want to show you a cool trick while I do this though. So I learned the other day, and it's probably been in the game the entire time, but if you click on something and hit Control R, it's basically like a vanilla version of Move It. And you can do this with any park. You can do it with trees, you can do it with props, and you can do it with these parking lots. The only thing that you can't use it on is unfortunately zone buildings, but that's not really all that surprising. I'm going to extend this a little ways over. There we go. A little seaside parking with $1 million views. Not a big deal. So along the back here, I'm going to have this be a place where, you know, maybe this is like a food truck sort of area. Okay, and that's just a little bit of extra detail to make this feel a little bit more lively. And honestly, this might be one of my favorite areas of the city now that we've just added a little bit more detail to this area. Now you can see that we are having all sorts of issues with our healthcare. We will resolve that, but that is not a now problem because right now we have to turn our attention back to our oil industry. I'm going to put the power plant in. I'm a little nervous about this because we're going to have to take out a gigantic loan for this, but I think that it's what we have to do. And then afterwards, we are going to adjust our transit to bring it into this area as well. So for the power plant, we're going to need to unlock it, and it's 2 more development points. We have 21 available, so that's not a big deal. This thing is $650,000. So I'm going to take out a loan for at least $500,000. So this is right on the edge. We're going to place this right about here. I want to leave a little bit of space on the side so that if we want to run this highway along the side of it, we can. And I'm going to pause it because we are losing so much money by placing this thing. It is absolutely wild. And if I continue to let this thing run, we're going to go bankrupt within the next 2 minutes. Now, I don't want to just run this highway directly to the front of this. That wouldn't make any sense. So I am going to leave the highway on the side. And I just want to see if this has any extensions or anything like that. We do have some. So we'll need to reserve this space for those in the future. I'll take this highway and basically run it along the side like that. And then we'll just use some of our alleyways to create a circulation pattern through here. So that gets our building connected up right here. I also want to make a connection with our electric cable, and I'll make this to the highway. And then rather than having this running all the way along the side, I think considering this is a power plant here, we'll have them demonstrate their power prowess, and we'll electrify all the way back here. This should get this connected. And then the last thing we've got to do, kind of the harrowing thing, is we are going to run this power line back to our power transmission main over here. Now, the thing is, I kind of made a mistake. You could probably spot it right now. I don't know that I have a way to get back here. Yeah, I've got to modify this industry area just a little bit. And there we go. That did the trick. And now we link up. So we are currently spending $70,000 per month in service trade. I'm hoping we see that exact same thing go in the opposite direction. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I was really nervous there for a moment because we were just bleeding money. Nice. But no. I should have been nervous. We're in kind of a rough spot. The money is oscillating quite a bit. We're going up and down, but we still have demand, which means that we might be able to fix this. But we're not importing anything anymore. I'm not sure why it jumped up like that and then jumped back down, but it's certainly concerning. So the first thing that I want to do, it's my fault. This doesn't have water connected to it. Oh my goodness. That is 100% our issue. So once we get water and power, we should be in a better spot with this, potentially. Okay, now we'll take one more look at this. It's not 100% better, but it is a lot better. Okay, it is 100% better. That was very stressful. That was incredibly stressful, but it shows the need to pay attention to what you're doing, because you can really cause lots of mayhem. And reasonably, we were making all the right decisions. We just forgot to connect up the water. And because they couldn't flush the toilets, they decided to shut the entire power plant down. That's rational. So now I'm going to take a moment to breathe. I'm really happy with the way that is actually turned out. I think it's a good location for it, even though it's next to the water. Now that our power plant is working, we've really got 2 more things left to do. The first thing I want to do is redo our transit routes, because they're really kind of messy right now and they don't make a lot of sense. We've got a whole bunch of buses going out to the dump. So we will redo those, and then we will place our new clinic, because that is a major concern. But I feel like redoing our transit routes will give us enough time to allow our budget to recover a little bit. And then I'm going to let things sit for a few minutes to see if we can pay back some of our loans and end the episode on strong financial footing. So with our bus routes, you might recall that we basically got a route that goes through the city and loops around, and then one that goes out to our forestry industry. What I want to do, rather than having this route that doesn't really honestly make all that much sense, what we're going to do is have a route that serves kind of our far-flung areas, goes to the outside world, links up once in the city, and then goes back out the other way. So this will be a truly regional route, and then a local route that circulates around the city. So let's delete the 2 routes that we have. And I'm going to plop a couple of new stops. The first one, rather than going deep into this area, is going to be on the side of the highway, which I think is going to be pretty controversial, but it's what we're going to do. I will also add a signal at this junction, which is kind of another point of emphasis as to why we probably need to upgrade this in the future. And then I'm going to get rid of the stops inside of these industrial areas. The only stop, or the only place that this will deviate, is it will pull into the city momentarily, just so that people can transfer between routes. And I think that the place that will transfer will likely be right about here, and I'll do it on a side street. And then I'll add 1 stop over here. I think I'll place this closer to the forestry industry. I'm not sure how many people are going to be walking to the dump, but if there are people walking, we will add some sort of a path between these 2 areas. And this will be highly temporary. We will likely remove this in the future. And then we can get rid of these crazy stops back here. And then the exact same thing at this industrial area. Stops on the side of the highway. And now we'll just draw this line right here. And afterwards, we will add all of our signals to make this a safe place to cross. Now, I will be the first to admit that this route stinks, but it is a regional route, and we don't have a lot of infrastructure in place right now, nor can we afford it. So I think that this will have to be what we have for the time being. In the future, this has to be one of the first things that we improve, but this might come by way of train or something else that maybe is a bit more appropriate for the community. There we go. We've at least got signals, so now people will be able to cross the street with a bit more safety. Now we need to have our local route as well, and I just want to find a nice way around the city where there are not tons of stops or tons of traffic. And I'm going to begin by getting rid of some of our existing stops. I think I'm going to stop having all the buses stop on Main Street, and maybe we'll go along the side of Main Street, but not directly on it. Main reason for that is we've actually got a fair amount of traffic coming on Main Street, or Boulevard de la Segunda Playa. So we want to make sure that we're not blocking up traffic there. With that, we basically have a completely clean slate to begin our routes. Our first stops, I think we'll go along the coast, and I'll go close to Main Street. Then we'll go a few more blocks over. And you can see it converted the whole street to be a gigantic bus stop. I don't want that to be the case. I'm going to go in here with a local road and just double click, and that will shorten that up. Looks a ton better. Then we'll go a couple more blocks down, and I think we are going to turn right here. So rather than going all the way down here, people can walk from this area. And now I think I'm going to have the bus do kind of an odd movement. So it's going to turn right, then go up the hill right here, and then I'm going to have it come back this way. So we get a little bit closer to these homes. But I'm doing that because it's also going to swing back this way towards the school. The school is such a major destination that we have to provide service to it. They would very likely request the service and even pay for part of the route. So it's definitely a place that we have to cover. And then here is our regional bus stop. So we're going to reuse that one. So we'll have a stop here and a stop here, a little bit closer than I would like them to be, but it makes sense in the context of what we're doing. Then we'll stop at the elementary school and kind of run through here and then loop back around. Now this is actually going to be 2 routes. I want this to be bi-directional, not just a circulator. So that's why I have stops on either side of the road. This to me just makes a ton more sense, because if you were going in one direction, the last thing you want to do if your stop is behind you is to need to ride the bus around the entire loop. So I'm changing the color of this one. I'm not 100% sure what these will be just yet, but this will make it easy for us to figure out which route that we're working on. Now, the one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is that we're going to have a ton of buses on line 1, which we do. We have 16 buses on that route, way more than we need. So I'm going to take this down as low as we can. And I'm going to also do something that might be a little, or it might at least seem counterproductive. I'm going to take the ticket price of this and make it free. This is our homeless circulator. So if someone's homeless, I want them to be able to leave town with a free bus. This is also going to help people get to work. So I'm going to imagine that some of these employers are helping to subsidize the cost of this route. So that's why this is going to be free. The lowest I can get is 8 buses on this route. That's not ideal. And my, oh my, now we are burning money once again. What is going on? I'm going to slow things down and see, this can't possibly be our transit that's causing all of these issues. The only thing that I could think of would be that it is our healthcare or something of that nature taking employees out of the workforce. I think I see it right now. We've got these little garbage icons, and that will get people to move away in a hurry. It will also get people sick. So I don't have a lot of money to deal with this issue right now. So what I will do instead is obviously the best solution. It'll just be to expand the amount of space that we have to add garbage to our landfill. So I'm hoping that this will at least get us by for a little while, but this is yet another city service that we are falling behind on. And then the other thing I'm going to do is just adjust taxation just a little bit. We have 0 commercial demand. I'm going to turn this down just a scotch and bump it up a little bit on our residents, and we'll balance our budget on the back of all of our citizens, at least for a little while. We have very high unemployment. We're at, right now, we're at about 11%. So I am going to go over to our industrial park and see if we can add a little bit of industrial back there and see if that can kind of put us in a better spot. We really need to get that healthcare facility as well. You can see the little icons are everywhere, but we can't afford to build it just yet. And with that, we've finally absorbed 100% of our industrial demand. I am, at this point, going to attempt to revise down those transit routes one more time. So we'll get those fixed. And that is just taking the number of buses on lines 2 and 3 and just dropping them to as low as they can go. And that is simply because we don't have a lot of vehicles, and I'm afraid that we're going to run out of vehicles on the route. So we are going to sit tight for a moment and see what happens with our budget as we let things run for just a little while. Can't help but think that there are probably 3 things that we could do to improve the situation. Number 1 is I think that we've got to address some of our traffic problems. As we have people moving in, we aren't picking up trash. People are having a tough time getting around. So I'm going to add some turning lanes and, maybe a signal right here. I don't think that we have one. Then I want to look at communications. So we'll make sure that we have mail and internet service in our new part of town. And then finally, I want to add that clinic. And if we have to take out a loan, we have to take out a loan. We've got to continue to spend money to balance our budget. So deficit spending it is. First things first, though, I'm going to convert this road. We converted part of this to be a highway. This whole thing should probably be a highway. That in and of itself might make this a more desirable route and get people taking this local route instead of the highway. Okay, so that should help out considerably with traffic. We've got to remove a couple of right-hand turns, but for the most part, that should clear up some of our traffic. So that should help us, because I think that was a big part of our concern. As soon as I say that, look at that. We're losing just a ton of money. Next, we'll do the same thing over here. So we'll add a quick signal. And there we go. And while this was going on, apparently we started to make a ton of money. I don't know why, but we started to. So I'm not going to complain that we're making money, but I still think that we need to accomplish the last couple of things that I mentioned, which will include adding a post office. I want to have one of these Japanese post offices though, so I'm not going to place it just yet. And then for our telecom coverage, this is kind of as I suspected. We don't have any over here, so this is going to impact those buildings leveling up. So I'm going to replace one of these parking lots that we placed over here earlier with the internet. And this gives us some coverage. It's not great. Don't mind that tornado. It's fine. Now, the clinic is something that we can place right away because this isn't all that much money. Maybe we'll go for the Japanese medical center and just replace the clinic that we have down here. We use one of these small clinics and the patient capacity is just too low for this community. So let's eliminate this and we use a little bit of eminent domain on this block and get our new clinic. But again, I'm going to let this run for just a couple of minutes and we'll make some money. I let this sit for just like 2 or 3 minutes, and now we're making almost $20,000 per hour. So it seems like those couple of fixes that we made were that important, that we had sick employees, that were making it so that we were losing money. So I think having healthcare is maybe more important than I thought it was going to be. But since we're making so much, we're going to sit tight. We're going to wait until we have all of the money to pay back our loans and purchase our new post office. Now, while we've been waiting, we've done a couple of things. First of all, we increased the taxes, which for a while didn't seem to be a problem, but now people are leaving. But it has given us enough money to build a post office. And even though I want the Japanese post office, I think that sometimes you've just got to be willing to accept what you can afford, which is a small post office. Now, this is the one thing besides high taxes that people are lamenting about this community. So my big hope is that adding this is going to accelerate our tax collections. But right now, again, we are at 16%. So we have really cranked the taxes. The goal now will be to just pay off the remaining loans that we have, which is about $300,000. So I'm going to let it simulate until we have enough money to pay them all back. Okay, it's been a long process, but we have paid back all of the loans. So now we are 100% debt-free and we are just making tons of money. Here's the thing, we're making all that money on the backs of our residents though, so I am gonna drop this down. And then one thing that we've gotta add is mailboxes. We never added that, so even though we have our post office, a bunch of our city is completely inaccessible to our postal system. So now that that's done, we're going to do a little bit of landscaping and detailing. And the main thing that we're going to be doing is adding a bit of trees in between here and then adding roads inside of our oil industry. I just want to make sure that we have a unique sand surface here. That one's a little bit darker, so we should be able to use this. So you can see that we've got an opening right here. This will be one of our arterials, if you will. And now I want to connect up each and every one of these buildings to these surface areas. So we'll make small paths. So just as a demonstration, we'll do one right here. So that is precisely what I'm going to do with all of these. And I think by the end, it's going to end up looking absolutely amazing. Okay, one thing that I'm noticing is that these larger buildings have surfaces. So when a building has a surface, I can't actually just go over the top of it because I'm overlapping a surface, which is not something that you can do in a vanilla game. So what I've got to do is either use this surface, which I could do, but they're different colors sometimes. So I think when it is the same color, I'll just reuse it. That'll be the easy way to handle it. So I'll simplify it and do something like that. That's easy enough. But for some of these, when the surface is a slightly different color, I may need to hide it. Here's a good example of that. So you can see that this one is light. That is not the color that we've been using for our roads. I can't delete it, so that last node is stuck there. But what I can do is be a little bit cheeky with it and hide this right there. And now it's gone, and now I should be able to just draw my own surface right over the top. I really hope that at some point we get the ability to delete surfaces with the vanilla tool, but for the time being, this will do the trick for us. So I'm gonna go through and we'll finish the rest of the surfaces. And boy, oh boy, that was a big job, but we've accomplished it. And now you can see that it looks like there are roads going through here in areas where there's a bit more wear. Now, one of the really exciting things is when you see some of the industry vehicles appear to be driving on these roads. They're not actually using them, but it sometimes feels like it. So it also kind of just looks like an alien area, which I love. Now, around the rest of this, I want to have a mix of oaks and maybe a few palm trees, but not all that many. Reasonably on this map, I used oaks for the most part to fill in most of the areas, knowing that oaks are native in California. So I'm going to have a nice mix of trees, go in with a 35 brush all the way around this area, and then I'll sprinkle in just a couple of palm trees. Okay, and that was quite a bit of landscaping, but I want to see how this feels. When you come in here, this is the one area where there's this opening, and wow, that would be imposing. But in some areas, as you come through here and around the back, and ooh, that's bad. Yeah, it's slightly hidden. Maybe not quite as hidden as I would prefer it to be, but it's not bad. Yeah, this is a problem. We are in a rough spot with our landfill. We need to address this in a bigger way, but for now, just to kind of get ourselves by, I'm gonna make a couple of upgrades. So I'll add a hazardous waste collection point. And this is doing very little for us, but it is moving in the correct direction. The one thing I'm gonna do to try to beef this up a little bit more is, for the time being, I'm gonna increase the budget for garbage management. We've got a ton of money at this point, so hopefully increasing that improves our efficiency and our processing speed, and will at least keep us in a place where we're not in dire straits until we can add a new facility, a recycling center or an incinerator or something like that. Next, we're gonna do just a little bit of landscaping over here. And that was a lot of landscaping done very, very quickly, but I do think that it looks pretty darn good. And it makes the neighborhood feel complete to have all that landscaping in there. Really, all I've done is gone through and planted some street trees, and then in between the lots, added a mixture of oaks, lindens, and London planes. And honestly, that mix is, in my mind, the perfect mix. They're the best trees in the game, and they look absolutely outstanding. And with all of that complete, there's only one more thing left to do. That's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. And as we wrap up for the day, I figured we would take one last look at our lovely vineyard that we completed in the previous episode, which is once again on fire. MYRTLE is paying us back for all of the mayhem that we've caused this episode with the budget, with some of our key walls. I feel like we've earned this, and because of that, we're going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I really can't wait to see you in the next one, where I hope that we burn down a little bit less than we did in this one. We have a few fewer disasters, and maybe our budget is just a little bit more stable. But until next time, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.